Hello, scholars. I am going to make this video for you. I know many of you are working on your Funds of Knowledge video 2 and lesson plan assignment. And so I know that sometimes trying to analyze and apply all of these different concepts in an online asynchronous class can be really tricky. So I thought I would make this video to see if I can be of any support to you and help guide you through this. Okay, so let me share my screen with you. And what I'm going to do is share this my screen, which is our Canvas course. Okay, and I am in module 6. Okay, so if you look at module 6, here I am. Let me just go back to the modules so that you can see exactly where I'm going. Okay, so this is our course, and I'm going down to module 6. So if you look at the instructions for the assignment, it tells you that the video is located in module 6. Okay, so I'm seeing module 1, module 4. Here we go. Here's module 6. Okay, so let me click overview here and wait for that to come up. And I'm going to go down to all of our videos here. Here's our readings. You remember this was from before our fall break. And okay, so down to our school practicum activities. Okay, so what this says is that our objective is to practice identifying and drawing on learners' knowledge assets and cultural capital forms in lesson planning linked to the Utah State core curriculum. So this can indeed be very confusing because it's, especially when you haven't been teaching and you're new, it's like, well, how do I do that? How do I get started? I get the idea. In fact, you've heard me say for so many times, and you probably say it in your sleep too, start with the learner, not the lesson plan, right? So start with the learner, not the lesson plan. But how? Okay, and so we've been talking about schools, society, and social differences, and how it's very important that because schools are reflecting U.S. society's white mainstream, and they haven't worked well for all groups of learners, and learners who come from families and communities that have been historically minoritized, like maybe they're economically poor, maybe they're refugees, maybe their immigrant status is questioned as undocumented, maybe they're racialized as Black, maybe they're racialized as Latinx. And so there's all kinds of social differences that have functioned historically in public schools to push whole groups of kids out. And we know that dream keepers are very aware of that, and they are successful where other teachers continue to fail with those students. The so-called hard to teach, remember the butterflies girl, remember Matthew. And so these are students that are representing whole populations that tend to not do well. So we have in U.S. society, our college and university populations tend to be overwhelmingly white, and our prison populations tend to be overwhelmingly brown and Black. And why is that? Is it because people who are identified as Black and brown are more criminal? They aren't as smart. Of course not, right? We know from studying about race and ethnicity that human beings, we are very, very similar. Our genetic makeup is very, very similar. Human beings have not been around long enough to evolve genetically to be actually different types. So we are very, very similar. And people who are economically facing poverty, things like that, they're no less smart than middle class people, but middle class white students tend to do very well in school. So we have to look at why is that happening. And Dreamkeeper teachers are the ones who know how to use education to link the learner and schooling success despite the leaking educational pipeline. Does that make sense? So if you want to be a dream keeper, then you have to learn how to do that too. And that's your job, in fact. We don't need any more dream wreckers. Many good people who want to do well come into our profession and they want to be successful teachers, but they don't know how. And so we do know what successful teaching looks like for all learners because we've always had these teachers who are dream keepers who are successful with students that are coming from the historically minoritized backgrounds that other teachers continue to fail with. And how do I know that teachers continue to fail with them? Because I see it in the patterns of the students who are pushed out of school. I see it in the racialized disparities of discipline practices, that it tends to be racialized students who are Black and brown, that and indigenous, that tend to be disciplined more harshly in school, who tends to be in the high honors curriculum and program types of classes. Those tend to be white students and Asian students. Why? Because they're smarter? No, it's because their background tends to match the schooling norms and background as well. And so if I want to be a dream keeper so that I am an excellent, successful teacher for all students, including those students who have historically been underserved, I need to know how to start with the learner, not the lesson plan. And that is our job as dream keepers. So how do we do that? Okay, well, if I'm going to start with the learner, not the lesson plan, then I need to be able to look at the learner and identify what kind of knowledge and cultural and community capital I'm going to bring into my classroom. Now, you know about this because we've been reading about it, and you know about it because you looked at and watched Miss Adriana Alonso's video, and she explains how she identifies and uses learners' cultural capital and assets in her curriculum. And that's how she starts with the learner, not the lesson plan. So if you have not watched that short video yet, it's only 5 minutes and 19 seconds. Come back to module 6 and watch that. Okay. And also, there are lots of, if you go through this practicum right here, this is set up to help you step by step by step know how to do this. Okay. So for number 3, it says read Miss Martha Tenery's home visit to see how she identifies the funds of knowledge, knowledge assets, and community cultural wealth. So she says, I'm going to start with the learners. How do I do that? I need to go get this knowledge that the learners have and their community has and bring those gifts into my classroom. Okay, so if you skim that, you need to download that chapter, and it has pages 120 to 123 to see how Miss Tenery does that. So you do what Miss Tenery does. Okay, and that's right there. Okay, now here's some more examples, and these come from the McIntyre book. I have it here on my shelf. I thought I saw it, but I'm not seeing it right offhand. But it is the McIntyre book, and I will see if I can find that and put a picture of it up there for you. But the chapters are right here for you anyway, so you don't need to go get the book unless you want to. And in each of these chapters, like the McIntyre chapter 2, you've got a teacher who uses the Zuni traditions and from the community, and she brings it into her classroom. She starts with the Zuni traditions from the community. She starts with the learners and their Zuni traditions, brings it into her classroom. And she shows you that right in that chapter. Another teacher in chapter 5, it's called The Sound of the Drum. And this teacher too is another example of going to the community and bringing that knowledge and those gifts from the community into the classroom. So you got chapter 6 and chapter 9 are also examples. So you have plenty of examples to look at to guide you through. You just have to be willing to put the time and effort into following it step by step. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I know what I'm looking for when I want to start with the learner and identify the knowledge gifts from the community. There's this little fly in here that's just bothering me. Okay, so let me pull up this form right here. And what this is this first document right here, Community Cultural Wealth, Household Funds of Knowledge. So I have downloaded that and I have it up on my computer screen. So I'm just going to scoot this screen over and I'm going to show you this one right here. Okay, so what this form says is that these are different kinds of knowledge sources, okay? And so linguistic capital, when I'm looking in the community and I am trying to start with the learner, not the lesson plan, and identify their gifts to bring into my classroom, some gifts are linguistic. As many of you know, I am from Mobile, Alabama, and I live in a community that is overwhelmingly African American. And so I am every day exposed to linguistic capital that is so rich. It's like verbal gymnastics all the time. And what linguistic capital is this comprehensive set of language and interaction skills that children possess as a result of their communication experiences. For many children of color, the role of oral and written storytelling, fables, sayings, and age-old phrases in their homes and communities are essential components of linguistic capital. What does that mean? Well, you know, sometimes how I'll say things like you make a teacher's heart sing, or what else do I say? There's I have to get my buggy to go get groceries. They don't mean like a baby carriage, they mean like a shopping cart. And sometimes when I am in the store or at a community gathering, or even at a family get together with my husband's family, I hear how they have this way of talking and interacting where they'll do what's called janking, and they're very quick-witted with their responses, and it's very humorous. And the way that they speak, the rhythm and the interactions are very different than mainstream white ways of talking. And so sometimes people don't realize that. So when I was in Mobile and I took my students to an event in Mobile, and it was an event where a very famous Black poet was speaking to us. I can't call her name right now, but she was on the stage, and the people in the audience who were Black would often call out during the performance, and they would say, yes, preach it, or amen, or tell it. And so they would be calling out and participating in that performance. And my white students thought that that was very rude and disruptive because they weren't aware of the linguistic capital and interactions where in the Black community in the Deep South, the speaker would have thought that the audience wasn't with her and interested or hearing her if they had not called out and participated. It ends up being this very synergetic, participatory, democratic, beautiful interaction. And I have been sometimes in Black Baptist churches where the speaker can get the people so roiled up and so emotionally overwhelmed that people will jump out of their chairs and be just so moved because they have such linguistic capital, and they can use language in such powerful ways. Okay, so that's what linguistic capital means. A question for teachers. How are teachers identifying and scaffolding and supporting the development of children's diverse language and communication variation, uniqueness, and strengths? So sometimes when children don't tell their stories in sequential manners, that's not necessarily because they don't understand sequence, but because different groups with oral storytelling traditions, they often have different ways of sequencing it that maybe are not sequential. Okay, and so how do we bring that into the classroom? So how are teachers creating classroom spaces, pedagogical approaches that recognize and embrace and build on these linguistic orientations? So sometimes in the South, I would have my children's friends come over after school, and they would say, get what? Get what, Miss Harris? Get what? And they were saying, guess what? And so what it was important to understand was that because I needed the students to walk in both worlds, I needed them to know, like, in these kind of spaces at school, we're going to use our very proper English and we're going to really enunciate. And then when we're just not with our friends and we're playing around and we're at home, we know that our way of talking at home and enjoying these other spaces, there's nothing that came from the heavens or from under the seas that say, you must enunciate. You know, that was actually a decision that groups of people made that said, this is better. So we have to help the students to know that their way of speaking isn't necessarily bad or wrong, but to walk in both worlds. Like, some people are going to think that they aren't smart. Southerners know this very well, that people think that a drawl means that you're stupid. And so many Southerners learn to get rid of their drawl when they are in spaces where there's people from other parts of the country, or it's very formal, institutional sort of spaces. So that's what linguistic capital is. So listen for that. Well, how do they use language? Social capital, that's another thing that we're looking for. It emphasizes children's social networks, peers, communities of adult caregivers that can assist with gaining access to information, navigating institutions, understanding unfamiliar situations. That is very much something that happens. For me, being a white person who's part of a Black community, many of the people that I live with and that I interact with at church spaces and community spaces, I've had more opportunities to learn how to use a computer, how to, call institutions in Washington, D.C., things like that. So people that I know will come and get me when they need something done on the computer, something typed up. It doesn't mean that they don't know how to do things, but they know that I'm in their network and that I can do that. Some of the parents know that if you have Dr. Harris call rather than Miss Smith, they're going to get more of a reaction from the school. So they rally about like who has a car, who has access to the internet, who has a computer at home, and they use their social networks to get the job done of what they need to do. So maybe it's with after school program, maybe it's the older children, somebody knows how to drive, and so they can take the children to their sports games or something. So for teachers, how do teachers move beyond deficit accounts of students and their families to help children recognize the gifts and talents and strengths of their families and communities? Isn't that the Butterflies Girl story all over? It is. So if teacher doesn't understand that butterflies do kill the cabbages, then teacher might have a deficit about, well, something's wrong. These kids are violent, right? So how do teachers engage with students in the world of social media as a learning conduit that is age appropriate, responsive, and builds on their ways of knowing? Okay, the next kind of capital we're looking at is resistant capital. This refers to the ability of students to challenge inequity and disrupt unfair situations and circumstances. It emerges from the notion of purposeful oppositional behaviors. And kids are great at this. Kids across social groups will have a strong sense of what is fair and unfair, and they will tell you. If the rule in the classroom is no food and drinks, and you're at your desk as teacher drinking your Coca-Cola, the kids will spot that, and they are likely to say that it is unfair that you can have it, but they cannot. So resisting capital refers to how do they navigate these sorts of things. Children learn very early what is valued and what is not valued. So many times adults think that children don't see color, and that is absolutely not true. As young as 2 and 3 years old, children learn that color matters. There's many famous examples of like a little 3-year-old in a shopping cart, and the little 3-year-old says and she's white and her mother's white, and she calls out to her mother, look at that baby maid. And it's a Black child also in the shopping cart with her mother, who's also Black. So the white child already knew that being Black was more associated with being a servant and devalued situation. So my own son came home from preschool trying to wash his brown skin off. And so he got a message that the books his teacher was reading, the people around him, the principal, the other teachers, everybody was white, and he was like, whoop, I'm not. That must be the wrong color. And so he was 4, so he wasn't developmentally able to name it, but he got the message that he was the wrong color and wanted to wash it off. So resisting capital is when kids understand that there's some inequities, and how do they deal with that? Sometimes it's in a healthy way, sometimes it's in a not so healthy way. I've had third graders who will start causing a commotion because they know that they don't know how to read, or they don't know their mathematics facts, addition and subtraction facts. So when it comes time to show that, they start acting up so that they can distract attention from what they don't know to their behavior, and they get out of that situation. So oftentimes kids will develop strategies for how to cope with that. I've seen high school kids where the teacher is trying to divide the children by saying, well, Carolina is such a good student and Martha is not, and trying to divide them like that. And Carolina was refusing to be part of that dividing of students. She didn't want to be used that way. So they have different ways of coping with and getting around these inequities. Okay, the next one is aspirational capital. This consists of their dreams, ambitions, hopes that children and families of color possess, their abilities to foster these desires, even in the midst of great adversity and hopelessness. I mean, this is just so powerful because the history of many, many groups, say, for example, indigenous communities, it's not simply histories of being victims, but how they often would be very cognizant of these oppressive situations, but still know and work toward a more hopeful future. That they were often with exemplary Black teachers. Remember Big Mama and Miss Mac? They would say education is the way. And at that time, it was Jim Crow era. And so you had 244 years of chattel slavery, and where Black people were enslaved. And then you had 100 years of Jim Crow, where it was racial segregation, separate but equal was not actually equal. And so there wasn't a lot of evidence around people that this would be broken down, but every generation kept pushing, kept believing, kept passing the baton, until eventually, with the sit-ins and the various protests and such, what happened in Selma, Alabama, and so on. So the Jim Crow era was toppled. And even though we're more segregated now in 2023 than we were in 1954, when the Brown v. Board of Education was passed, in which made racially segregated schools against the law, we're more segregated now than we were then. It still is no longer okay to explicitly discriminate against people because of the color of their skin. So this kind of ability to maintain hopefulness in the face of all this evidence of oppression and exclusion is what aspirational capital is. Sometimes I've translated in parent-teacher conferences where the parents don't speak English. The family is recently from Mexico, and the son says, I want to be a doctor. Quiero ser médico. And the teacher was just like, that is ridiculous. And that teacher didn't see that kind of aspirational capital. I would say even my own mother had aspirational capital. She and my dad never graduated from high school, but they had aspirational capital. They knew people who had gone to college. And so even though they themselves did not know how to and had not even graduated from high school, they still made it so that they talked to and pushed it so that they could get me to go to college, even though they didn't really understand how college worked. They didn't know what a campus was. and they sent me off to Idaho in a car with 20-year-olds, and I was only 17 years old, and they were like, well, hope she gets there and does that. Not because they didn't care about me, but because they didn't know how it worked, but they were able to use their social capital to be able to make their aspirational capital go. And eventually, I not only graduated from college, but I went to graduate school and have a suitcase full of degrees. So I'm very grateful for my own parents' aspirational capital. Familial capital. Okay, this refers to cultural and communal knowledge and ways of knowing and being that are nurtured among the family and family environment. This type of knowledge can include, but it's not limited to, kinship ties, notions of care, love, and affection that are unique to the family. So this is about family histories, family stories, family values, and this is very true. You see that when you maybe you have some experience with Latinx families, where they might have, if they're of Mexican descent, maybe they have a big quinceañera, and they have these kind of traditions and cultural practices that is a lot of knowledge. I know when I joined my husband's family, which is a family that is Black from the Deep South, I learned a lot about cooking, and I learned how to make different recipes and how to invite people over in a way that didn't match at all how we did it as a white family from a working class farming community in rural Wisconsin, but it was very specific to the Deep South and Black families. So how do we build that in? And navigational capital here. Now, this refers to children's understanding and ability to effectively interact in various social institutions, including schools. Okay, so a lot of times I have an experience that has been seared into my memory because it was so traumatic for me, but it really shows navigational capital, and I was very grateful for it. I don't know how many of you would remember when this happened. There was that fly keeps bothering me. There was, what was it? This was maybe about 15 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago. And there was a big scare where somebody was mailing envelopes and they had this toxic material on them. I'm not remembering the name of it right now, but it was toxic and people died. And at Halloween time, my oldest son and his friends were in middle school, and they thought that it would be funny to crush up some Halloween candy, some Smarties, and put that in an envelope and mark the envelope with as anthrax. That's what the powder was called that was so deadly. And so they put it on the principal's desk, and the principal did not think it was funny. They evacuated the school. My son was arrested, and his friends were arrested and taken to juvenile detention. When I got the call, my son had already been taken away. I didn't know anything about how the juvenile system worked. And so obviously you can understand that I was very traumatized by that. And I didn't know how to even find my son. And so eventually I found out where he was, and I went over to the building where he was being held. And another mother she shared her navigational capital with me and helped me to navigate that very difficult situation. I have helped many of these women who have come to the United States and not known how to drive a car or get a social security number. I have navigational capital, and then I have shared that with other people to help them become independent to navigate through different institutions. So people do have that. And if you were to come to Mobile, Alabama tomorrow and come to Pritchard or Tolmanville, you might not know how to navigate in that very working class Black community. And so I would be able to help you to navigate it because I know the ins and outs of where it's safe to be and who the movers and shakers are in that community. So I have a lot of navigational capital there. And if you were going to live there, I could share that with you. Okay, there's other kinds of knowledge that people have, like here in Cedar City, a lot of people have ranching knowledge. They have a lot of agricultural knowledge, farming knowledge. They know about planting crops, hunting, tracking, horseback riding, animal management. There's a ton of that kind of knowledge here in Cedar City. There's a lot of knowledge about geology and mountains and different kinds of soils. So material and scientific knowledge, mining knowledge, we know that in Cedar City because this is Iron County. So there's a lot of historical knowledge about that. A lot of people have economic knowledge and market value appraisal. They know about building codes. I know my husband is an electrical engineer, and so he knows a lot of things about building codes and that kind of knowledge. Household management with budgets, childcare, cooking, appliance. I've met many people who are from other countries that come to the United States, and they know how to make $1 out of 15 cents. And that's a saying that comes from the Deep South. Make $1 out of 15 cents. It means to stretch your dollar. How can you get the most out of your money? And so a lot of people are very good at that, and they have to be because money is hard to come by. It's very expensive to be poor. Medicine, contemporary drugs, medicine, first aid, anatomy, midwifery, folk medicines, herbs, cures, religious knowledge. Maybe they know a catechism, they know about different kinds of baptisms, they know about the Bible, they have moral knowledge, they know ethics, they might have other kinds of, maybe they know the Quran, maybe they have other religious scriptures, for example, maybe the Book of Mormon. So there's all kinds of knowledge for that. Okay, so we're going to come back to that now that we know the different kinds of capital. And let me just share my other screen with you and see where we are on this. Let's see. Let me see if that'll do it. Okay. All right. So let's see. You should be seeing my my screen that has our module 6 on it. Okay, so what we have just done is we have reviewed the forms of knowledge and cultural capital that we're going to be looking for. And that knowledge that we identified, navigational, aspirational, familial, social, all those kind of things. That's what Miss Martha Tenery was looking for. And she went out in the community and found and identified it and then brought it into her classroom. And that's what you see in these chapters here as well. Okay, let me just make sure that I am sharing the right screen with you. Okay, I think, yeah. Okay. So, so we know about what we're supposed to be looking at. We say start with the learner, not the lesson plan. Okay, great. How do I do that? What am I looking for? Well, now you know. We're looking for navigational capital. We're looking for aspirational capital. We're looking for funds of knowledge. And then we're going to bring that into the classroom. Okay, how do we, let's actually practice identifying some knowledge. Okay, so I am going to, I'm going to pull up this video right here. That is the Funds of Knowledge 2 video. And it says, now it is your turn. Use the community cultural wealth and household funds of knowledge sheet to identify the funds of knowledge in this video. Okay, so I'm going to click that video. All right, let's see what we have here. And it is only 1 minute and 55 seconds. So let me just be quiet and let you watch it. Oops, sorry about that. Okay, let's just, I'm gonna see if I can get it ready to start again.
I'm about to cash this.
Okay, we can always pull that back up if we need to. Okay, so what kinds of things did we see in that video? Okay, so I'm gonna share a different screen with you now. Let's see, that has this next chart. Okay. All right. Let's see. See if I can. Okay. So now you're looking at the funds of knowledge video 2 chart. And this is from step number 7 in module 6. Okay, so it says name, date, funds of sources, funds of knowledge 2 video, which you just watched, and you'll watch that again. Okay, so it's only a minute and some long, but there's a ton of things in that video. Now, you're going to want to keep this other paper here handy, because you got to look for what is it that you are seeing. Okay, so we got to be able to identify what we saw on the video. All right, so okay, let's see, without pulling the video up again, let me just see if I can give you a couple of examples. Do you remember that there was a dog in the video, right? So we saw a dog and running around outside, and then we also saw the dog running into the house, and there was a water bowl and a food bowl there, and actually a box of toys for the dog. So so we could say, okay, so we're gonna write this down. Dog, food and water bowls. We saw that, and we saw a box of toys for the dog. So what kind of knowledge would that be? That may be about animal care, right? Somebody knows about and values animals, pets and animals. So animal care. Okay, what else do we have here? Did you see the sewing machine? Okay, I'm gonna put a sewing machine, and there was a fabric right next to the sewing machine. Okay, so what kind of knowledge might that be? Well, I know from my time in South America that there's a lot of people who have like fashion design and knowledge, and they can use to create clothing and other goods. So, for example, when I was in South America, I saw women who would see like somebody wear something on TV, and without a pattern, without any instructions, without the internet, they would go buy some fabric and be able to cut out and create their own pattern and create this beautiful skirt that they saw somebody wearing on TV. So that was really about fashion design. There was a lot of measurement. You have to be able to measure a fabric to be able to cut it into the size and shapes that you need it. So really, how to sew, that's knowledge, right? How to sew. So measurement is, and how to sew, that's a lot of math right there, math knowledge. Let's see, what else about that? Different types of fabric, you have to know about different types of fabric. It's possible that they know, how fabric is made, the different kinds of fabric. So there's a lot of knowledge right there that might be about maybe household goods and management and acquisition. Okay, What else did we see? Did you see the bicycles? There were electric bicycles. And I don't know if you saw the helmets. Okay. And so you got safety knowledge, navigational, right? You can use a bicycle to get around as alternative transportation rather than drive your car. So navigational knowledge. It could be, depending on the family, exercise knowledge, right? Exercise knowledge with health and wellness knowledge. Maybe leisure knowledge, right? Leisure. You got to know about how to stay active and do other things. Leisure knowledge. What else? Seems like there would be a lot of like physical science there. You have to know, especially in Cedar City, if you're going to pedal, a lot of it's going to be uphill. So you would need to know about physical science, right? You would have to know about things like speed and distance. So you could have some math knowledge there too, right? Okay, so you get the idea about how to keep filling out that chart. And so the evidence from the community and then what types of knowledge it is. There was a lot of cooking things. So you think about like cooking and baking, right? Whenever you have ingredients, that could be like management and budgeting when you have to shop for ingredients. Maybe you're going to the farmer's market, and so you have knowledge about where crops are grown, what is fresh, things like that. Chemistry, right? When you mix ingredients together and you bake it, you change the character of what the ingredients are. Something might, like butter, if you melt it, it takes on a different shape. So you've got a lot of science in there. You'd have a lot of math because you are measuring, right? And so a lot of times people know these things. When I was in South America and even in Alabama, very few of these amazing cooks actually use cookbooks. They had everything in their heads and they knew how to estimate, and they knew how to taste test it so that it was the right consistency. So there's quite a bit of knowledge in how to do that, and how to serve a big amount of food to a large group and healthy bodies, that kind of knowledge. So you can just there's just tons, even in a short video that was just only a minute and a half or so, tons of knowledge there. Okay, so you finish filling this chart out using the video and the and this chart and this knowledge over here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close that one. And now what I want you to look at is, let me see if I can bring up for you the Utah core. And you know about this because this is the Utah State Core Curriculum. As a teacher, you are an employee of the government, and the state says, this is the knowledge that we're going to, we want children and adolescents to learn. And so we have the Utah state core standards for curriculum. And so, you know, you have to decide what area you're going to use, maybe science. Okay, so I need to take a Utah science core curriculum, and I need to find one that is going to fit my grade area. Okay, so you have to look through here and find one. If you're going to be an elementary teacher and you want to do a science lesson, then you need a Utah State core curriculum from the elementary science. If you want to be, if you want it to be a secondary education lesson, then, and it's for math, then you need to find a core curriculum objective for math for secondary that you can copy and paste into your lesson plan. Okay, so I'm going to move that out of the way and go back to our lesson plan here. So here we have our chart, and here's our lesson plan. So it says, make sure that you show where your funds of knowledge or cultural assets are in your lesson plan. So you got to incorporate something out of, this is the knowledge from the community. You got to take something from there and put it into your lesson plan, but it has to be linked to the Utah State core. So I'm going to copy and paste a standard, and let's say I'm going to do elementary science standard, and I need to actually copy and paste the exact maybe it's about you know, maybe it's about the role of heat in chemistry or something like that. And so I need to find the exact state core curriculum to copy and paste right here. Okay, so elementary science, Utah State core curriculum standard. So I'm just putting what it is here, but you're going to actually put the actual standard in there. Go back to the Utah State core and go through and find your standard that's going to match. So I decided that I want to create a lesson for elementary students that is going to incorporate all of this. I think I want to use all of this baking and cooking knowledge. That's a lot of chemistry, a lot of science. And so I'm going to go through here and I'm going to create a lesson that has my, I'm going to type this out exactly. So you need an objective. What do you want the learners to learn? So type that out, what your lesson objective is. What is your objective, and how are you going to measure whether the students actually achieved your objective? Okay. And then it's going to be a science lesson. So always when you're teaching a lesson, you can, and any parent, any administrator, any other teacher, anybody comes up to you and says, well, why are you teaching that? You can say, well, because it comes from the Utah State core curriculum, and I am working on standard X. I'm a third grade teacher, so I have to teach the third grade standards for science, and this is one of the standards. So you're accountable for teaching the core, but you're linking it to your learners and making it relevant to them by creating a lesson that brings in their knowledge. So remember the chapters from the McIntyre book? That's what they do. They take their state core curriculum standards and then link their learning objectives to that and use the students' cultural knowledge, and that's how they start with the learner and make the learning relevant to their students. So you have examples of that to look at in Module 6. And this is really important to type this out. What kind of materials are you going to need for this lesson? Anticipatory set. I love this part of this lesson plan. SUU uses a different format, but I observe student teachers, and there are so many times that the lesson is absolutely meaningless and boring because the student teacher doesn't know that you have to hook the learners. You need to use some sort of anticipatory set so that you can hook them into it, and they're like, wow, I want to learn how to do this. Okay, so maybe if you know, I know that the families know a lot about making gumbo, and maybe my anticipatory set is that we're going to taste test some gumbo. I've got them hooked in and interested and excited about that. And then that's my what taught. Now how's my how taught, right? What am I going to do here? And in this part here, this is where this teaching the lesson, this is where you're going to use your principles of enduring learning. Maybe you're going to have an activity where you have joint productive activity, and you're all creating something together. Maybe you're making a souffle together. Okay, that takes a lot of math, measuring, science, chemistry, right? And so it's a joint productive activity. It's maybe principle 3 because it is, I'm looking at my cheat sheet here. It is contextualization, because you know that the students know about gumbo. You know that during Mardi Gras, a lot of people eat gumbo. And so so that's contextualized because they know it. It's from their background, their community. It's also principle 4 because it is a challenging activity. We're not just filling out a workbook page or answering fill in the blank questions. We're actually doing an activity where we're using our science and math and measuring to make that gumbo or that souffle. Okay, and maybe they're doing some guided practice where they are, you know, practicing measuring something, because especially with a souffle, it will fall easily if you don't have it measured. And think about if you are in a high altitude like we are in Utah, in Cedar City, you have to calculate for how much the air pressure is different in the higher elevations when you're trying to bake. So that's a lot of complex math calculations right there. So do you see how you're going to create, fill out your lesson plan here based on your grade level that you actually want to teach? So some of you want to be kindergarten teachers. Some of you want to be 5th grade teachers. Some of you want to be history teachers in high school. So your lesson needs to match what area you want to teach in, and it needs to have a Utah State core curriculum standard that matches your lesson. It draws from the community knowledge of the learners that you are getting from your chart, and it incorporates the principles that enduring principles of learning. It doesn't have to have all of them, but it should have at least one. Okay, and show me in the lesson plan, like if you are using this cooking knowledge from here. So we saw there was a KitchenAid KitchenAid mixer and a food dehydrator. Think about all the science that goes in there, right? So if you have that kind of changing of one state to another, like butter being melted, highlight that in here. Like for example, measuring melted butter or whatever it is. And this is the cooking knowledge. Then, highlight that for me so that I know that where the knowledge from the community is. And again, look at your examples in module 6. You have a lot of modules, examples in that module to look at. So follow the model and you will do fine. Okay. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what you all create. I'm going to stop sharing now and get this out to you.